Good morning and welcome to the Thursday, January 13th, 2022 meeting of the Infrastructure Services Committee. Thanks to COVID, we gather once again as a collection of pixels. It was so nice having seen you briefly, and I hope we can get back to this again. I'd like to acknowledge that we are coming to you from the traditional territories of the Sechelt and the Squamish First Nations. We have in front of us an amended agenda. And we are hoping to take the items on the agenda today to the board meeting this afternoon, just as a note for everybody. So, can I see a motion to adopt the amended agenda? Moved, seconded. Any other issues with the agenda? No? In that case, all in favor? Thank you. All right, first up, contract award for Church Road. That is one report we are certainly very, very happy to see. And who is bringing that report forward this morning? Mr. Rosenboom. Please step forward.
Good morning, everybody. Good morning, Chair McMahon. The first report on this committee's agenda is one that staff have been looking forward to present to you for a long time. It's the contract award related to the construction of the Church Road Wellfield. With the issuance of the water license for this project on December 17, 2021, the SRD now has all the permits in hand to start the construction of in the upcoming weeks. This could result in the wellfield to be commissioned early September, which would allow for the wellfield to contribute to the water supply of the Chapman system in late summer 2022. Residents can find more information about the project, the construction progress, and at the special page on the Let's Talk Water site of the SRD. Besides, staff will present construction updated report at the March, May, and July committee meetings. Residents that might be directly impacted by this project will be contacted separately with more detailed information on how this project might affect them. I would like to take the opportunity to acknowledge the great work that our capital projects division staff present at this meeting have done on this project to get it to this stage. Thank you. And of course, staff are happy to answer any questions you might have.
Thank you very much. And yes, we definitely appreciate all the work that staff have done on this. It has been a saga. So, questions from the board. I see Director Ties.
Yes, thank you. First question is, as construction of a new water main goes along Reed Road, wondering if we can pull some gas taxes into that and widen the shoulders as we're putting it back together.
Thank you for the question. We had extensive discussions with the town of Gibsons to see what was possible on in terms of an alignment of the water main locations and project timelines with what their work on the site, and ultimately we concluded, or it was concluded, that our water main is currently switched from the town of Gibson side to the MOTI side of the highway, of the road, so to the north, north side. And there is no opportunity to construct a water main at that or a multi-pathway at that location because there is no right-of-ways, not sufficient room in the shoulder there within the MOTI right-of-way along the entire stretch of Reed Road. So it has definitely been considered and explored for the town of Gibsons, and we looked at it from multiple angles, but we don't see an option at this point in time.
Director Hiltz.
Thanks, Chair. On the drawings do show, I think it's a 1.5 gravel path on the east side of Gibsons Creek. So whether that could be kind of active transportation in waiting, that's in the future. But there is a gravel path over top of the water line as part of the construction. as I understand.
Maybe I can have Manager Mezrach talk about that.
Yes, thank you for the question. That is correct. There is a gravel path on the east side of Gibson's along Reed there that'll be restored with basically a travel walkway as part of the restoration in that area along that segment of roadway. That's correct.
I'm just going to jump in here for a minute. I was unaware that the main had moved to the north side of the road. Is there any advocacy we can do with Modi to encourage them to resolve the right-of-way issues? Shall we take this to our MLA, for instance?
Thank you for the question. The switch from the town of Gibson side to the town of to the MOTI side was confirmed only in December, late December last year. So you might indeed not be fully aware of that. Yes, advocacy can always help. I'm not sure. I think there are some challenges for the current alignment there for MOTI, where some parcels are really already actually part of the road is currently already on private property. It's not even on MOTI right away. So there will be some significant challenges to get a wide enough shoulder there. So as part of the project, the entire that side of the road will be completely repaved. And if there would be an opportunity to expand it, yes, that's of course an option. But I'm not sure if that can be accomplished within the time frame of this project.
Too bad it's not an oil pipeline. Perhaps we could call it that, and then we'll get our right-of-ways. Director Ties.
No comment. I see on page 3 that we are allowed to take up to 1.25 million cubic meters annually out of that reservoir. I'm wondering how that relates to the capacity of the wells and what time frame it would take to actually pump those 1.25 million out at full capacity. I don't know if that's something that can be easily calculated, but and then the other question is if we take out more than 1.25 million, but then say supply the town of Gibson's with our water during the winter time to make up for the difference, is it more of an absolute figure or is it more of a net figure so that we can actually potentially take out more and then throw some stuff back at Gibson's so that they don't draw as much from the aquifer and it all comes out in the wash? Thanks.
Thank you. The 1.25 billion cubes is currently would allow for the wells to be at full capacity during the summer months, and would provide communities of Grantham's zones during the winter months. So it would replace the current Grantham's well, as the well field also will include the Soames well. So the community will receive the water from the well field in the winter, and during the summer months it can run at full capacity to provide water to the Chapman system. It's an absolute max volume. We cannot legally draw 1 cubic meter more out of the aquifer. From a net perspective, I can understand what you're referring to in terms of if the town of Gibson would take out less, can we provide more? However, the impacts will be different given that we would draw from a different location. So the overall environmental impact might be significantly different. What we will do, and that was part of the discussions we had with the town as well as with Squamish Nation and the province, we will later this year start to work on or connect with all the parties to see if we can get a better understanding of the actual maximum withdrawal capacity of the entire aquifer. What else can be drawn from the aquifer, and what are the boundaries of the aquifer? And is there even a potential to get a water license to increase this volume even further at some point in the future? But there will be significant more monitoring and assessments required in order to answer that question. And so this would allow us to at least address the water supply situation during the summers. Any additional volume would allow us to also provide water during emergency situations, let's say throughout the year when Chapman might not be able to provide it.
Thank you. Director Beamish.
Are we in this process planning on putting in some monitoring wells above the field so that we can? I know Gibson's has a number of monitoring wells, and is the SCRD going to be putting some in as well to monitor the impacts in the SCRD area, and also. We raised the question last year in November about the idea of putting some informational signage for people so that they are aware that they are within the aquifer area. Is that possible to do that as part of this project, just to inform people that this is our water source? You're living on, you're recreating on, you're working on our water source, and please respect it. Is that something we can see doing? We'll be happy to cooperate on that with the SCRD.
Thank you for the question. To answer your first one, there will be two monitoring stations established, two groundwater monitoring stations or wells, one above the well field and one below, as well as one monitoring station in Soames Creek to monitor the impacts, to ensure that the impacts, that there are no significant impacts to the creek ecological ecosystem. In terms of signage, I think there might be other funds we have available to collaborate with the town on that item.
Thank you. Director Hiltz.
Thanks, Chair. A couple of questions, kind of it's the logistics. I'm interested in the laydown area in Shirley Macy Park, which is part of the proposal. So if you have any details on that and how that might affect park users, and in tying together kind of the fill and the archaeological pieces, the fill's going to be coming out. Is that going to be stockpiled for archaeological, or does it go away, or like the fill management aspects? And are there some synergies between this fill and some need that the SCRD might have for this fill, such as up at Sprott Kids Park, or at one point we were talking about a cover on the landfill at beside Sprott Kids. Thanks.
Manager Mizarek, can you take those questions?
Yes, thank you for the question. So regarding the laydown area that you refer to, the location is at the old caretaker's house at the Shirley Macy Park. So the contractor has that option to utilize that if he wishes to do so. We haven't finalized that. We haven't, obviously, that'll be first order of business discussion with the contractor where his laydown area is going to be, but he has that option, but it would be that location. As far as the disposal and fill material, so the material is the responsibility of the contractor that comes out as part of the trench excavation to get rid of it. And we can look, I guess, if there's it's anticipated to be clean material, and it'll be also monitored during construction for archaeological. We'll have an archaeologist on site reviewing the material and stuff like that. So we can look at if there's possible avenues or areas for the fill material to be disposed of. We can certainly look at that for sure. Yes. Thank you.
Thank you. And I had another logistics question. Just naively, I sort of assume that you start where the well is and you build your pipe all the way to the end. But that would mean digging up Reed Road in the middle of, say, July and August. Is it possible to stage the construction so that we could avoid the worst of the traffic nightmare that is liable to result?
Thank you for the question. So, you know, I guess the sequence and schedule and construction, that'll be certainly gone over with the contractor when we have the construction meeting. You know, I'm just throwing out there, perhaps the contractor may put 2 crews on where he could start conceivably at both ends of the project and work together. That's an option. That's certainly his means and methods, but certainly he'll want to basically, you know, expedite and complete the project as soon as he can, for sure. And as far as traffic control management on Reed Road, there is an extensive traffic control plan that the contractor has to adhere to, and that he has to provide a, you know, routing and detour plan for us to review during construction, prior to construction. So we minimize impacts to traffic as much as possible with that, for that same very reason that you mentioned. Thank you.
Thank you. I would encourage the communications plan to include the people who live on Cemetery Road, because they are already worried about the volume of traffic that they're liable to have from people, you know, avoiding Reed Road. They're already starting to get people avoiding Reed Road, and that's likely to have an impact. I'm hoping that somebody wants to make a motion here. Director Hiltz.
Sure. Yeah. Thanks, Chair. I am happy to move the recommendations as presented by staff on page 1 of the agenda package.
Do I see a second? I see a second. Wonderful. Any further discussion? If not, I'll call the question. All in favor of the motion? Any opposed? That's great. Thank you very much, staff. That's good news. Next item on our agenda this morning is the disaster recovery plan from regional flooding events. The amended report in our amended agenda. So that's on page 9 of the amended agenda. I don't quite know how it's page 9, but never mind. As long as we all know where we are, we're fine. I am just going to suggest that we break up the very long block of recommendations into 2 chunks. The first chunk dealing with all of the water main items, and then the second chunk dealing with all of the parks. And then if we have any discussions or amendments, it's a little easier to deal with. So, do we have introduction, please? Who's up?
That would be myself, Chair. Thank you. So I'll just give a brief introduction. So this particular report was outlined as being delivered in January as part of the budget deliberations. We reported on recovery efforts related to the flood events that happened in November, and I would argue are still happening up until today. So this particular report is to address the recovery efforts and the next steps, and really it looks like it's going to be a phased approach. And so this particular report, yes, is very detailed and provides a lot of information. So each GM in the respective areas can cover which sections are relevant to themselves. So community parks and water infrastructure in particular. And then our manager, senior manager, Jerry Parker, who has been acting as the director for the emergency for the flooding event, can discuss any procedural or process questions related to the disaster recovery efforts, because this is a first for the regional district to undergo this type of process. So happy to take any questions. Thank you.
Great. Thank you. Directors, do we have questions? I do, if you don't. Director Beamish.
I guess the first question I have is that I see this as voting all. How is the town of Gibson's impacted by this?
In particular, some of the things that we don't quite know yet is how the disaster, that recovery unit is going to operate, whether or not it's going to be under the Sunshine Coast Emergency Planning. That would be what we would likely envision. How that administrative oversight will be seen is to be determined at this point.
Okay, because there are no projects on this list that affect Gibson, so that's all I'm just saying, that if we are a part of it, we probably have some project we want to add to it, and so that that's just and I don't know whether we have that opportunity, so I'm just not sure I should be voting on it. That's all.
Thank you. We might at some future point follow up on that. Thank you. Director Seegers. You're muted.
Thank you. Didn't click that one. I clicked all the others. All right, on page 11, last bullet. It talks about rebuilding like for like or future proofing. So a couple of questions. One is on the recommendations, page 9, the dollar amounts that are represented or put in there, are those like for like, or are those including costs for, improvements to potentially, avert these kinds of things happening in the future? And then the other is, where is the province inside of, future proofing, given the conversations that we've been seeing in the media and from the province due to the stuff that happened down in the Lower Mainland?
Thinking if someone can address the first part about the money, I could probably talk to the second part.
Yeah, so I can address the money part. And of course, I know Jerry's been very active with the province, but most certainly the province, I think through the federal government indicating that they would provide some funding to the province related to the flooding events regionally, that we have been asked to provide the province with information on additional scoping and, realizing that sometimes responding to the resiliency of the infrastructure, so not doing like for like. So for instance, not putting a bridge that is still in harm's way type of thing, if we are continuing to see climate change impacts to that particular creek. So that is definitely part of the scope, but there is some, and I'll defer to the respective areas. So we do anticipate there could be some opportunities for additional funding. We just don't know what that is. And so right now what we're following is the guidelines within the disaster recovery guide from ENBC at this particular time, which is that there's certain outlines and it generally is like for like, but I think the province is recognizing that's maybe up for change.
So does that mean that the numbers on page 9 are like for like and do not anticipate any improvements?
I see Ms. Gagnon waving.
Thank you very much. And I'll answer from a parks perspective. It's a great question. And I think I'll start it by saying this is probably the first of several reports that will come forward to the board as we continue with our planning. And what from a parks perspective, we've done here is try to bring forward those pieces of projects that we either have timeline crunches on. So for example, Catherine Lake, we've got a campground we need to open. So we need to get moving. Or quick wins like Suncoaster Trail. Also want to get that sign back up before tourism season begins again. So we've brought forward those projects that we have planned for that we feel we could get moving on. Those plans do include considerations for enhancements or climate mitigation pieces that we could include. But more work will be done with those as we continue down with the implementation. The Cliff Gilker, for example, we're asking for consultant fees to actually do some more detailed planning. So that's when we'll really incorporate those strategies that we might be able to include to look at more than like for like, but those mitigation or trying to avoid similar things when we can. And those conversations as we begin to work more closely with our, oh boy, Jerry, I've forgotten the name, but the gentleman from the disaster recovery unit that is assigned to us to begin working with, as those conversations progress, we'll see more of that included. So the funding amounts that are before you do include some thoughts for those mitigation as well as like for like. So it's a bit of a blend. And you'll really see as more projects are brought forward that we'll begin to see what strategies we can employ, what projects are really ripe for consideration around climate mitigation strategies. So hopefully that addressed your question. So it's a bit of both, but the planning so far is definitely including it, and it will continue to probably even explore it more in depth.
Thank you. I see GM Rosenboom.
Yeah, I would like to address the water side of the part. In terms of the intake itself, there is no real future proving required there. This is the intake, the basin behind the intake weir has completely filled up with gravel, and it's time to clean it out. We've done it, I think, 7 years ago, and the November storm really filled it up to over the rim. So that it is something that we might need to do again in 5 to 10 years anyway, and that's an issue that every water intake within the province in a similar system has. It's part of the operating work that is required. In terms of the main we looked at options to realign it away from the current slope, and we concluded that actually we can future-proof it at the current location by just restoring the site back to its original state by placing rock instead of dirt, and that will stabilize the site sufficiently for the future. And the culvert that was part of the cause of the slide in its first place will be extended so that there is no future issue there. So we can future-proof that site as part of a like-for-like solution.
Thank you. Mr. Parker.
Thank you. Yes, the couple of additional things. We've had an initial meeting with Emergency Management BC about the recovery process. What we understand is the province is very actively looking at what has been their historical approach of doing like for like, recognizing that there is many good reasons to look at rebuilding to prevent future erosion or mitigation. So that is the current state. We've had a preliminary meeting. Follow-up contact has occurred as well, and his name is Tom Yashizman. He's with EMBC Recovery Unit. And we have filed our disaster financial assistance application with the province. It has been received, and we have been assigned a recovery officer, Tim McLeod, who's well known in recovery efforts. And he will be in touch with us to have a follow-up meeting. Matt Trite, Manager Protective Services, will be serving as the EOC Recovery Unit for the area. And so he'll be the main point of contact between the SCRD and Emergency Management BC through the recovery process. Next steps would be to continue to populate our community plan and our recovery plan and looking at getting some of these points clarified. The key thing about the appointment of Tom through the recovery unit is the province is actively looking at addressing what areas are experiencing in terms of unmet needs. So those costs that may arise that have typically not been covered through the 80% funding through recovery efforts. The province is very actively looking at those things. They want to be made aware of them. They have no guarantees, they've made that clear, but they do have alternate sources of funding that can be considered and can be explored. So we're continuing down this path, and we're looking forward to more information, and we'll continue to keep the board informed. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Director Ties.
Mentioning alternate sources of funding, I'm just wondering if there's any possibility that the remaining 20% that we're responsible for could be covered by things such as gas taxes, or is stacking not allowed in that regard? So just trying to think a little bit outside of the box as to how we can not have that go straight to the taxpayers' pockets. Thing.
I see Ms. Perot.
Thank you. Yeah, so we did explore that. We did contact UBCM, and we somewhat knew the answer, because what we're proposing here, the majority is operational. So things like replacing signage, etc. It doesn't mean that future projects such as disaster mitigation is one of the criteria within the Community Works Gas Tax Funds program. However, it does have to materialize to new infrastructure or something quite significant. So we definitely are still keeping that in mind, but for the 20% at this particular time, that would likely not be eligible. That is where we're hoping some additional funding from other sources from the province may kick in.
Well, darn. Director Seegers.
Thank you. Looking at the recommendations on page 9, there is a request for the 0.09 FTE for the project management oversight. What would the funding source be for that?
Thank you for the question. The recommendation, and perhaps it's not overly clear, but it does say funded through each individual project. And each individual project further on in the report identifies that reserves are the funding source. So it's inferred that the 0.09 FTE is funded through those reserves as well. At this point, we're coming for 100% of the funding so that we can get moving on the projects, which is a requirement of the MGA to approve the full funding. And as Manager Perot said, we definitely will be exploring alternative sources of funding for any portion that we're not able to recover through disaster funding or other mechanisms. But for now, it's through reserves.
Okay, so just for clarification, so for example, Cliff Gilker planning, no, not that one. Catherine Lake campground repairs, 35,300. You're saying that part of the project management oversight would come out of that 35,300 for, okay, perfect. Thank you.
All right. That seems to have clarified that. Are there any motions out there circulating? Director Seegers.
I will move the recommendations as on page 9.
On page. All right. And I see a seconder. Thank you very much. GM Rosenboom.
Sorry to interrupt the voting. First, you talked about splitting it in two. Is it still a desire, or do you want it as one? Just for...
Sorry, that's my mistake.
Yeah, I think we have clarified the questions that we had around the parks ones. So I think that we can just do it in one fell swoop, as it were, if all the directors are happy. CFO.
Yeah, sorry. And just to maybe clarify the earlier question from Mayor Beamish as to why they would vote on this, is it is saying that it is to be included in the draft financial plan. So that would be a decision of all the board. So.
Thank you. Excellent. We all know what we're doing now. This is good. So I'm going to call the question. All in favor? Any opposed? Seeing none, that passes unanimously. Thank you. All right. Over to upgrades to McNeil, Chapman, and Edwards Lake dams. Is it Mr. Rutley presenting on this one?
Thank you, Chair McMahon. During the course of last summer's visual dam engineering inspections, there were several minor dam deficiencies that were revealed and are now recommended to be addressed as part of the current design, permitting, and engineering project. Presented for your consideration is the staff recommendation for amendments to the 2 contracts with WSP. The recommended contract increases include a contingency allowance intended as a placeholder to account for potential additional requirements that may arise during the permit application review process. Use of the additional funds will only be authorized in writing in advance by the SCRD. Both of the amended contract values are within the approved project budgets. Staff are happy to discuss any questions that you may have.
Thank you very much. Director Toth.
Thank you, Chair. I actually don't have any questions. I think the report outlined it perfectly. I'm going to move the recommendations as presented on page 23.
I would ask that we also and further move the recommendations to the January 13th board meeting, if that's agreeable to the mover.
Sure. I think I said that, didn't I?
Right. Do I see a seconder? That's seconded. Thank you very much. Is there any further discussion on our dams? Seeing none. All right, I'm calling the question. All those in favor of the recommendations? Any opposed? Thank you. That passes. Excellent. We like our dams being repaired. Okay, water treatment plant UV upgrade. Who's up on this one?
It's supposed to be our manager, Walkie, but I have not been able to. He's not joining us yet, so I will present the report instead. So, as part of the budget deliberations for, I think it was 2019 or 2020, the board approved the budget for to replace our UV treatment system as our Chapman treatment plant. It's currently a single system with no redundancy, and the proposal is to replace it with a system with actually a backup filtering system. So the purpose of this report is to allow for the construction of, for the design and engineering of the new UV system to take place. Once that is completed, we'll present the findings to the board and seek approval to for a contract award for the actual construction of the UV system. And staff are there to take any questions you might have. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Are there any questions, comments? Boy, everybody's quiet this morning. All right, Director Seegers.
I will move the recommendations on page 27 with an addition to move this to the board this afternoon.
Thank you. And I see a seconder. All those in favor? Any opposed? Seeing none, that passes. Thank you very much. Director Toth.
Thank you, Chair. Just a quick process question. With this one and the last one, we added the moving it to board this afternoon, but it wasn't part of the original agenda recommendations. I'm just wondering why. Thank you.
I think it was, we have been having some discussion about some of these contract items that are very much routine business and whether they should be going to committee at all or maybe going directly to board. But in this case, I think we also thought we'd just get them all done and out of the way expeditiously. I don't know if Director Seegers has anything to add on that subject.
Yeah, I think Director McMahon covered that off. These are basically saying executing the contracts. And so if we, do we wait 2 weeks to execute them, or do we execute them right away and have staff moving forward on them? The other thing that's happening, and it came up particularly with the brass water service fittings contract piece, staff have negotiated a sufficient time in there, but we are hearing from others that costs are going up. And so if we wait another 2 weeks, when these come forward, is that going to impact costs? We just want to get them done and out of the way.
Thank you. Yeah, it was just because it wasn't in the original recommendations to move it to board. I wondered if something had come up during agenda review that we didn't know about. So thank you.
Thank you. And talking of brass water service fittings, that is the next item on our agenda, and over to Mr. Walkie.
Thank you. I think Director Seegers just introduced it for me almost. The Utilities Services Division purchases and maintains an inventory of brass and water service fittings to ensure the water and wastewater systems are suitably maintained. Repairs can be effected in a timely manner, and supplies are available for new servicing and system renewal. The SCRD entered into a 3-year contract in 2019 with Flowcore Incorporated for the supply of brass fittings and related waterworks materials, which expires on March 14th, 2022. The current contract includes the option to extend the original contract for up to 2 one-year periods. The existing contract with Flowcore had static pricing for 3 years, which is unbelievable now if you think about it, from 2019 to 2022 with a 0% increase in material types. Staff have reviewed the submission of updating pricing from Flowcore and recommend exercising the right to extend the contract for an additional 1-year period for the supply and delivery of brass fittings with the maximum 2022-2023 upset value of $71,058 plus GST. The total revised contract value will now be $183,798. The ongoing purchase of brass water service fittings will be funded through current annual operations and capital budgets as approved through the annual budget process. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Do we have any, Director Toth?
Thank you, Chair. Again, I think the report outlines it quite sufficiently, and I appreciate that there have been 0% increases. Not too much in life gives us that. I'm happy to move the recommendations. I assume with the addition of that this go to board this afternoon.
Thank you. And I see a seconder. If there's no further discussion, then all in favor? Any opposed? No? Great. Everybody's in favor of brass fittings. So terrific. Thank you. Now up next is the Langdale Wastewater Remediation Project, another ongoing saga. And I believe that's Mr. Walkie again.
Yes, thank you, Chair. The Langdale Wastewater Treatment Plant Project Grant Application Report is requesting the board support of a grant application to be submitted to the Investing in Canada Infrastructure Program, British Columbia, Green Infrastructure Environmental Quality Program. ICIP grant funding is available up to 73.33% funding of projects funded 40% by the Government of Canada and 33.33% by the province of BC. This intake is designed to target projects starting in 2023 and completing by 2026. Staff are recommending that a grant application be generated that will fund any of the 3 options up to 73.33% of $1,025,498, which would be a maximum of $753,331 grant funding. As part of the grant application, the board needs to commit to fund the ineligible portion of the project costs, which could be up to $272,167. Staff also requests that a recommendation be made in this meeting for this report, and its recommendation is to go straight to the January 13th, 2022 board meeting to enable the board support to be included in the January 26th grant application deadline. Thank you.
Thank you very much. And are there any questions? Perhaps from Area F. Director Hill.
Well, I don't think I have much of a question other than that this is the plan to help deal with the saga. So thanks for staff for moving the plan along. And the issue of the project total has been cleared up in the introduction. So as long as staff were happy with that recommendation, there was some discussion about the $1 million versus the actual amount. So as long as we're good with that, I understand it at this point. So I'd be happy to move the recommendation as it's presented if staff is still fine with it as it was laid out.
And perhaps move it to this afternoon's board meeting?
As well as that, yes, thanks for the reminder.
Yes. Thank you. Is there a seconder? Okay. I just had one question for our currently invisible CEO, which is, talking of federal grants, have we heard anything official on our application for Wood Creek Park wastewater facility? I'll throw that out there and let it circulate. I see. Oh, Jim Rosenboom.
To date, we have not heard anything on that grant application, and it's on the list to follow up with them again to see where they're at.
Thank you. It's been out there for a long time, months.
Yes.
Director Seegers.
Thank you. So in the recommendation, it says we would submit a grant application for up to $1,025,498. Is that actually what the application is going to be for, or is it going to be for the 700-ish thousand? So is the recommendation that we've made correct?
The project value will be 1 million and a bit. However, of that, 272 is not an eligible cost. So the actual grant amount that would apply for is 753.
So what should the recommendation say? Is it okay to say up to 1 million on that?
I think it is not incorrect, but I think it would be more adequate also in future if somebody reads the recommendation again and doesn't know this explanation to say that it is 753,331.
As I read it, the sentence says for upgrades to the value of, and the upgrades, the total package is indeed that value. So yeah. I think it's okay, even if the wording is a little confusing and could be improved in future.
Okay.
So I'm going to call the question. All those in favor? Any opposed? Seeing none, thank you. We can get that, move on with that and keep our fingers crossed that we get that grant, because that's a long-standing and difficult project. Okay, the next item on our agenda, oh my heavens, I forgot to ask for a motion to receive all reports and communications. Moved, seconded, all in favor. Sorry, folks, I'm out of practice. Pmac Minutes. Is there any items arising, Director Hiltz?
We got a 7.8.
7A.
7A.
Wait, sorry.
Curbside.
I beg your pardon, sir. This is what happens when I don't have two windows open at the same time. We do. We have a report on our adventures with curbside collection over this snowy winter. Over to you, Ms. Cooper.
Thank you, Chair. I have a verbal update for the committee. On December 13th, 2021, Salish Soils became the subcontractor to Waste Management and began providing all of the SCRD's curbside collection services, including assisting with taking calls and emails from residents. As part of that transition and to improve service delivery, some residents in Lower Roberts Creek and Lower Elphinstone were moved from receiving collection on Thursdays to Fridays. SCRD staff prior to Christmas were able to update all outreach materials, including the website, collection guide, printable 2022 collection calendar, interactive web map, as well as the SCRD Collects map. Alerts on the app were sent out, as well as Facebook and website updates. A direct mail out and newspaper advertisement by Waste Management is forthcoming. Over the past few weeks, there was heavy snow and ice conditions on many of the SCRD's rural area roads, and this impacted the collection truck's ability to provide service. There was recovery planned for last Saturday. However, winter road conditions persisted and resulted in some homes not being able to be recovered until this week, on their regular collection day. Since the collection trucks are a split packer truck that has 2 separate compartments, they're collecting both garbage and green bin from all residents, regardless if this isn't their garbage week. Communications regarding the service interruptions were sent out on the app, website, and Facebook each day throughout the last couple of weeks. However, the collection truck drivers are only able to determine which roads can be serviced and which are impassable while they're out driving the roads, and thus are not able to be included in those app alerts. We have good news in that we have been notified that service is on track for all homes to be recovered for all materials this week. Thank you.
Thank you. I will say I got a lot of questions from residents on January 6th because it was snowing. The roads were bad and certainly in Elphinstone, but there wasn't any notice on the app saying whether we were going to have pickup or not, or whether we might, or anything. So if we can use our app, even if the alert is that if your street is not very passable, the truck's not going to go down it, which is perfectly legitimate. It would have been helpful because there was a lot of confusion. So thank you. Director Hiltz.
Thanks, Chair. Just a quick follow-up. So is next week everyone puts stuff out to the curb? It's the catch-up week next week, or was this past week the catch-up?
Thanks for the question. This week is the catch-up week. So garbage is being collected from all homes, regardless if theirs is not their garbage collection week. Thank you.
Even in Area F. Wow. Director Seegers.
Thank you. So I guess this is a clarification. Is it our staff or is it now going to be Salish Soils who will be sending out notifications? It's our app. So I'm assuming it's our staff that do that. Okay, so during Christmas, we didn't have staff because the offices are closed. How is that managed?
Thanks for the question. Myself, I sent out the alerts in conjunction with our communications staff member who worked over the holidays as well to update the website and Facebook. Thanks.
Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, sorry for my not having the right things up on my screen, but I think unless there's further questions that we can move on to the Pmac minutes. Are there items arising from the Pmac minutes? I just wanted to make a note of recommendation 3 from Pmac, which was in support of continuing with virtual meetings. And I too support that. I think our committees and commissions should be meeting virtually. The province's archaic legislation notwithstanding. And I was wondering if Manager Cooper might just give the board a refresher on where Pmac is in its evolution into PTAC.
Yep, thanks for the question. So the Pmac, so the Solid Waste Management Plan Monitoring Advisory Committee, depending on how the meetings proceed or not, in person versus virtual, will be coming to a close over the next couple of months, at which time recruitment will begin for the Plan Technical Advisory Committee. And those folks are involved with the development of an updated, essentially a new solid waste management plan. So all of that will be occurring over the next 3, 4, 5 months. Thank you.
Thank you. So we will be advertising again for volunteers for the committee. Director Hiltz.
Thanks, Chair. Yeah, I did have a question on, it's on page 37. It's the illegal dumping summary. And I'm just wondering if do we receive this at a committee level, or is this, where does this report come to the board's attention? I don't remember it so I just need a bit of reminder.
Thanks for the question. So there was a board resolution directing staff to prepare an illegal dumping summary for the past 5 years and present it to Pmac. It is included in the agenda package for the December meeting. So I believe that the directors would have received it when receiving the Pmac agenda package. As well, it's available on the Pmac webpage as where all the agenda and minutes are posted. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, if there's Director Seegers.
Thank you. I know that the board is aware of some of the, what the technical advisory committee is going to be doing and why we're doing that, but it might be advisable to mention again for those who are monitoring this, why we're going to that step.
Thank you. Great question and point of clarification. So as part of solid waste management plans that regional districts in British Columbia are required to have, when you are looking to update or make major changes, the ministry requires that you have a technical advisory committee to do so. So at that point, you no longer need a monitoring committee because you're no longer monitoring that plan. You're moving forward with what essentially will be a new plan. So that's part of a Ministry of Environment and Climate Change strategy regulation, is to have that technical advisory committee provide input into the development of that solid waste management plan.
Right, and some of the things that we're looking at addressing are potentially barging or sending off coast some of our solid waste if our landfill becomes full before we have a new one.
Thank you. I'm not sure if I entirely am clear on the question, so I'll do my best to answer, and please let me know if I didn't answer it fully. So the solid waste management plan update process, there's going to be two major components to it. So we're a bit unique in that situation in that first, the cornerstone of a solid waste management plan is what are you doing with your waste? Is it landfilled or is it barged off coast in this case and buried in a landfill in another jurisdiction? So that needs to be determined. There'll be quite a large engagement process in order to, when we reach that decision and sort of that direction, we've already undergone the first sort of few steps, if you will, through in terms of the feasibility study. So the role of PTAC is far beyond that portion, but is more involved in the actual development of what's in the plan. What are going to be our targets? Are they going to stay the same? Are they going to sort of increase in terms of diversion or decrease in waste disposed per capita? And what type of initiatives is the region going to undertake to reach those goals? And how would that be funded? What are the staffing requirements or other requirements? All of that is included in a updated solid waste management plan, of which PTAC has a large role in participating in how that is drafted, and then brought out to the larger community. And again, large engagement process, and the whole process from start to finish could be 2 to 3 years until it is sent to the ministry for approval. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you. I appreciate the expansion on the information.
Yes, good. Thank you very much. We have one other item on the agenda, which is a communication regarding farmers' use of water. I understand that the ISC agenda in February will have the drought response plan for 2022, which will in part address water use and food growing, but perhaps Mr. Rosenboom could answer the question, which was that farmers request permanent exemptions from stage 4 water restrictions and financial support in lowering commercial water rates, such as has been done by the Comox Valley Regional District. You have some observations.
Thank you, Chair McMahon. The only observation I will share at this point in time is that the exemption that the Comox Regional District have is that watering for in their stage 4 for livestock is allowed. And in our case, that's not even included in our, it's a default exemption under all stages that livestock can be watered at all time. So it's excluded from any of the stages. So in practice, we already have the same exemption for water use for livestock watering in place, which is, and COMOX does not have the same exemption in place for crops.
Thank you.
And more information on that is to come at the February IC meeting.
Right. Thank you. Director Seegers.
Thank you. I would suggest that we respond to the writer of this correspondence indicating that further information will be coming forward in February to the ISC meeting, so that we've received the information and that will come forward.
Right. Does that need a motion?
Probably.
If the board would like if that correspondence to come from the board or from staff, either way, a recommendation would be appropriate. Thank you.
I don't know, would staff, I mean, who did the correspondence come to?
Was to the board of directors and staff, but I think since it was addressed to the board, we might as well step up.
Okay, so then that the board respond to the correspondence. I'll make that
Okay.
motion.
That was nice and brief. All those in favor? Wait. Mr. Rose.
May I do a suggestion and that this recommendation is moved to this afternoon's meeting? Otherwise, the motion is not adopted until the 27th, which is 1 week prior to the next February IC meeting.
Brilliant. Thank you.
Yes. Move the amendment.
Move the amendment, seconded. All in favor of the amendment? Right. All in favor of the amended motion? Brilliant. We've got it done. I think we've run out of agenda, folks. I think we can wrap. Is there a motion to adjourn? Brilliant. Do we have any questions from the public in any way, shape, or form? I think not. There's no attendees in the gallery. Okay, folks, thank you very much. We'll see you back again this afternoon.
Thank you all.